Hey guys, welcome back to Collective Perspective. I'm here with my boy Craig as always. How the heck are you, my friend?
I am beautiful. How are you today, my friend?
I'm great. Your Togepi's making me real happy back there.
I think he's cute, right? My dog likes to use it as a pillow, so it's lost a lot of its fluff. But
It looks a little saggy.
exactly.
Um, so today we're going to dive into a topic. So I was actually, this was kind of Craig's idea, and I interpreted it wrong. So he said, let's talk about some fun subsets to collect, and I was like, okay, bet. We'll be broad. We'll talk about like this is what you could do. You could go for a series of games, and Craig's more like, here's a series of games that you should go for, and I think that's a better way to go about it.
Yeah, I suggested we have like full lists. Like, here's a subset idea. Here's what games are in that subset if you want to go for it. So we did the work for
We
you. You're
did the
welcome.
work for you. That's right. Um, so I think that I do kind of want to give like a brief overview before we start into it. We're gonna do three each. Um, so I think some things that you could do. Let's say you're getting bored of collecting. I don't know, like maybe you're kind of unsure what to buy, or you're running out of. I don't know. I can't fathom running out of games to buy, but like say you're getting to the end of the road with like your goals maybe, and so you kind of want some new goals. Well, some really obvious ones that you probably know about. You could go for a whole series of games. Craig's got his Gravity Rush. He loves every single Gravity Rush item that's ever existed. You could go for a genre. There are so many people that just go for horror games. That's a competitive one. It's a pricey one, so be warned,
Mm-hmm.
beware.
Yeah.
I always talk about important games. That's a pretty obvious one. People, even
Mm-hmm.
if they don't intend to collect important games, they're collecting the Marios, the Zeldas, just because they want the Marios and the Zeldas. But you
Mm-hmm.
could totally
All the first
focus,
party games for a system,
yeah,
stuff like that.
exclusives, stuff like that. And then licensed properties. I love to get Marvel games. Craig buys a lot of anime games. You
Mm-hmm.
could be more niche than that, though. Like, I like to get Hanna-Barbera stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's all kinds of crap like that. And then some more unique ideas, I think, instead of just like we talk about developers and publishers a lot as like, oh, watch out for this publisher. You could totally go and collect all the games for a specific publisher.
Mm-hmm.
You love Atlas, and that makes
Yes.
sense because they have made a really good name for themselves over the last like 4 decades.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it,
Of mostly very high quality. So.
I would say go like don't just settle for like Nintendo. That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of
Yeah.
broad. There's a
Yeah.
lot of awesome
Yeah. Break the
publishers.
bank. Go for all way forward games on Game Boy Color, Get
Yeah.
creative with it.
See, that's another thing. You could do developers, you could do publishers, um, or even like Rare. People love Rareware,
hmm
especially the freaking N64 era. But they had a whole decade of games before that you could totally get into.
Yeah. Or you could be even more niche. Be like, do you really love a developer? Like, do you love Kojima? Do you want to go for all Kojima's games? Do you love the beautiful music of Yoko Shimomura? Do you want to get all the games that she's ever composed for? Like, weird stuff like that. Like, the more granular you get, the more fun and interesting it can be, too.
And that's what it's about. Like, find something that you find fun. It doesn't have to be valuable. It doesn't have to be your Honolulu investment possibility. It's just got to be fun to you. It's a hobby after all. Um,
True.
but
I feel like a lot of people don't even enjoy this hobby. Make sure you're having fun with it.
I wrote that down too. The composer, designer, producer, director, whatever you want to do, you could totally like. There's so many credits in video games. Like you could find something like of a big name. Like a composer is such a good one. Like if you find some music from Chrono Trigger that you just
hmm
love, go see what else that dude did, and see what other games he did before and after that, and go collect them.
hmm Yeah, and that's actually something, I gave my Yoko Shimomura example because that's actually one that I've kind of done over the years. Like, when I find out that she makes some music for a game, I'm like, all right, I'm probably going to enjoy that game to some extent just because at least the soundtrack's going to be banging. So,
Yeah. I haven't done that, but I think that I could find some enjoyment in that. Like Eric Chevalier he made the Rayman 2 N64 specifically version of Rayman 2. I've never looked in to see if he did anything else, but that would be a fun thing for me. First appearances we've talked about a lot. You could go for like all the not for resale games that came out on a specific system. And then like, God forbid, go buy some freaking imports. Get something for stuff that like is probably, you know, didn't come out in your region. Like, you could specifically go for games that didn't come out here, or you could go for games that have different cover arts abroad and you just think they look cool, you know.
Or like, say you have like the full N64 set, but you still want to collect N64, like get the Japanese exclusives or something. Like, stuff like that could be fun.
And then something that we don't want to admit as Americans, most games, you know, before like 2000 or whatever, came out in Japan first, so they're technically the first prints, and that's a big deal. That's kind of a cool thing that you could care about if you wanted to.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you won't find anybody that does care, but you could care.
All right, so that's that.
You could care.
So now we have specific examples for you guys. We're gonna do 3 each. I've been talking for a minute. Go ahead and dive on in, Craig.
Oh, my hair's falling. So first one I did was GameCube RPGs. Now, Christian said this is dangerous, and I kind of agree, because sometimes people argue, you know, what counts and what doesn't count as an RPG. So this is kind of, you know, just my personal definition of it. You know, this is based off of my personal definition. So like, no Harvest Moons or Animal Crossings, even so some people might count those. I consider them more simulators. But GameCube RPGs, so there's 26 of them. So I hope you packed a lunch. I'm gonna be yapping some games for a minute, but here's a fun list for y'all to go for. So we got Baten Kaido's Origins, Baten Kaidos, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, Custom Robo, Digimon World 4, Evolution World, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, the best GameCube game ever made, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, Gladius, Lord of the Rings The Third Age, which is like a super weird turn-based Lord of the Rings game I just think is awesome that exists, Lost Kingdom and Lost Kingdom 2, Mega Man X Command Mission. If you didn't know there's a turn-based Mega Man X game, now you do. Phantasy Star Episode 1 and 2, Online, Phantasy Star Online Episode 1 and 2 Plus, Phantasy Star Online Episode 3 Card Revolution, Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, Pokemon Coliseum, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, Skies of Arcadia Legends, Summoner and Goddess Reborn, Tales of Symphonia, Virtual Quest, X-Men Legends 1, X-Men Legends 2, and Yu-Gi-Oh! The False Bound Kingdom. So there's 26 GameCube role-playing games that you can go ahead and get a subset for. You'll have a ton of really cool GameCube games, and you'll have tons of games to actually play if you play your games for some reason, because RPGs are very long. So, yeah.
That is... So, you know, people roast the N64 a lot for not having any RPGs. That is literally only 5% of the GameCube library, if that number is correct.
Exactly. Yeah, the GameCube library, the GameCube does not have a lot of RPGs, but the ones that it does, you know, overall quality of those RPGs that it does have, pretty high. Most of these games are well regarded and well liked, so.
Very true. Yeah, I mean, you can imagine they probably didn't they couldn't fit a massive RPG on those tiny little discs.
Yeah, I think that is part of why, you know, the PS2 was such a RPG powerhouse, because it just had the disc space for these big games that were much more open-ended, you know. A lot of these games, like, they have a lot of voice acting, different things like that. So I think the GameCube was partially skimped because of that.
I think that's a really cool list. I think RPGs for any platform is a really great idea. Whether you play your games or not, like if you play your games, that's hundreds of hours of entertainment. If you don't, RPGs are just inherently more valuable.
Yeah, they're just cool. And I was gonna say, it's not gonna be a cheap subset, but it's a cool one. So
freaking Skies of Arcadia's up there.
So is Fire Emblem. I don't even know. I mean, I'm so out of the loop with pricing on GameCube. I think Lost Kingdoms 2 is still pretty expensive. I think Mega Man X Command Mission's pretty expensive. Obviously, the Pokemon games are expensive because Pokemon games, people make up those prices day by day. So,
yeah. Speaking of Lost Kingdoms, and speaking of like collecting for a developer, that's freaking FromSoft. You know, collecting the history.
So if you want to be one of those cool people that's like a FromSoft fan, like pre-Demon Souls. some stuff to check out.
Yeah, it would be really fun to just be like the collector of a developer, you know?
hmm And that's something God, I wanted to do that with Atlas, but it's just too much. It's too hard, especially like anything like before the year 2000. All those games are just so expensive.
Yeah.
Especially if you're only a complete and box collector like me. It's like you're going to be paying $1,000 a game, and it's like I can't do that for 40 games. So
Man, freaking what is that Megami 10 Jack Bros just sold for an unbelievable price on auction. It was a sealed graded copy. It was unbelievable.
Oh.
I wish I had it off the top of my head.
I believe it though, because that game. I mean, even before games were as expensive as they are now, it's like I remember when I first started getting into collecting, seeing it in person for like $700, and like that was like holy cow, $700. Games can cost that much. And it's like now, like fuck, there's so many games that are $700. So many.
So you actually called mine out. The first one I'm gonna do here is Hideo Kojima.
Oh, there you go. Cool.
So I don't know much about. I haven't played a ton of Kojima games. I'm actually kind of doing this one more as like an example for those of you that are like, what do you mean collect the games for a writer or collect the games of a producer? Some guys are kind of like famous, like a lot of times we know our Miyamotos, we know our Kojimas, but there's a ton of people out there. Like I just mentioned, Eric Chevalier. None of you listening to this have ever heard that name in your life. Like you could totally go and find anybody from a game that you really love and just like go, dig into their work if that interests you.
Yeah, like say like you're like, oh man, this game has an amazing art style.
Yeah.
Go to mobygames.com, look up who was on the art team, and start making a list from there or something. There's
Absolutely.
so many options of interesting things you could do. So, and I always like to shout out Moby Games whenever I can. So.
Moby Games is really good for credits. You're not going to want to go to Wikipedia for this. And speaking of which, Wikipedia is where I got this list of games from. So here we go. So Hideo Kojima, like he's been a writer, producer, designer. He's been so much across his career. And he hasn't done like hundreds of games. He's been around for a minute. He's just done a lot of like good, important, quality games in his time. So you could be as broad or specific as you want with this. And by that I mean like his first game is Penguin Adventure, according to Wikipedia. It is an NES title where he was assistant director. Now, if that actually is his first game, even if all he was an assistant director, I think that's pretty cool.
Humble beginnings, right?
Right. And if you're not into that, if you just want stuff like, oh, I'm a collector of Hideo Kojima produced games, then cool, do that. Just narrow it down however you want. But let me go through this short list here. He did 1986's Penguin Adventure, which didn't even come out here. It was Europe and Japan only. And then, of course, Metal Gear and Metal Gear Solid. So Metal Gear NES 1987, Metal Gear Solid PS1 1998. He was director, producer, and writer for that series. Infamous freaking Snatcher, man. Sega CD 1994. You ever play any Snatcher?
I actually have. I never finished it. I want to get back to it because when I played it, I was like, it's a very hyped up game. Like people always say it's amazing, and I was like, it can't be that good. It's pretty dang good, honestly. So I need to get back to it. It's just I have to emulate it because I don't have it, unfortunately. And sometimes when you play on an emulator, at least for me, it's like I feel like I'm like cheatly playing a game, even though it's stupid. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It just feels less authentic. Like I wish I could pull out a Sega CD with it, but that's just not gonna happen. So
is that something Limited Run has re-released?
no, if it was, it probably wouldn't be like $1,000 game.
Oh,
so.
dang.
Yeah, it's pricey.
That game came out way earlier in Japan. It was on PC 8801 back in 1988. But yeah, Sega CD here, 94. He did the Zone of the Ender series. He was the producer on that. That series started in 2001. I want to say PS2. This series has been getting more love recently. Boktai 1 and 2 on the GBA. That's like a really weird and unique game that uses the sun to do something in the game. I have no idea what it does.
Yes, because the Game Boy Advance is infamously enjoyable to play in the sunlight.
So the cartridge, I believe, has some kind of solar situation going on, probably like a calculator.
It's something weird like that, yeah.
He did Castlevania Lords of Shadow, only the first one, I think.
Oh. Huh, I didn't know that.
And then that's probably around the time he left Konami, before the second game came out. Death Stranding, we all know, and if you want, you could go branch out into Japanese titles. He did Tokimeki Memorial Drama Series, which started in 1997.
So funny.
There's several games in that series. He was a producer of that. And if you are like some kind of super fan for this guy, he also acted like in games and in the occasional movie. So you could pick up some non-gaming stuff, like maybe a DVD or games that he acted in, if you are some kind of super obsessed fan.
One thing I saw in an interview with him once that I thought was so funny, I think about all the time, was somebody asked him, what made you get into making video games? And he was like, well, I wanted to make movies and that didn't work out, so I made games instead. I'm like, oh, it's that easy. So I just have to not be able to make movies and I can make games.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Mm-hmm. Very, very much like the savant of video games, Very interesting. A little full of himself, but in a way I feel like he's kind of earned it, so I don't get too mad about it.
Yeah.
All right. Is that it for your first list?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so my next one's shorter, but I thought this would be a fun one because it's a little out of the box. Usually when you think of handheld systems, you don't think of first-person shooters. And you might be thinking, oh, what system you talk about? The GBA, that has some weird random first-person shooters. No, because of course I want to talk about the PlayStation Vita. So there's only 5 first-person shooters on the PlayStation Vita. So It's a small subset of great to mid games that you can buy for your Vita and have a little subset. So we got Borderlands 2, which, obviously a very beloved game, but doesn't run super well on the Vita. You have Call of Duty Black Ops Declassified, one of the worst. It is the worst reviewed Call of Duty game of all time, and it's not very good. You have Killzone. I forget the full name. I just wrote down Killzone, but there is a Killzone game for the Vita that's awesome. There's Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, which is like a super weird, interesting FPS. Highly recommend to everybody because it's such a fun, interesting, different experience. And then Resistance Burning Skies, another game that reviewed but I actually quite enjoy Resistance Burning Skies. I think it's a very fun game. So there's a little small subset for you guys out there. That way you don't have a giant list of role-playing games to spend $10,000 on.
Yeah, 20% of the library is what you just named right there, that tiny little Vita library.
Pretty much.
That's really
cool. You only
cool.
have like 10 games left and you have the whole set.
That's a twin-stick console, right? It has a...
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You would think there'd be a few more on there. That's pretty cool.
There's not a lot of games on the Vita, so...
I'm a big FPS guy. I really enjoy a good FPS campaign. Yes. I don't play enough of them.
For those that don't know, he is a pretty big Call of Duty fan, so...
Yes. Keep that on the down
Did I just out you? Are you embarrassed now?
Yeah, I play an obscene amount of Call of Duty.
Buys every GameCube game, plays Call of Duty.
Yeah, I actually just sold my copy of Call of Duty because it's on Game Pass now, because that's how little I care about collecting for modern garbage like that.
Oof. That's awesome.
Yep. Someone on Mercari gave me $22 for that. Much appreciated.
Shout out to that guy.
All right. So this is a small one too. The original Xbox, there's like several lines of platinum hits. You've got your platinum hits, you've got your family hits or something, you've got your platinum family hits, you've got your best of family hits. It's the most ridiculous crap. There's a full list on Video Game Sage. Shout out to Default Gen for that. But I was just going to quickly mention these really cool black or platinum hit bundles, because these 5 games did not get a black label bundle release. Okay, so you can only find these with a silver banner that says platinum hits on it, and yeah, I think they're kind of cool. But the Crash Super Pack was a Platinum Family Hits release. There was Shrek 2 and Shark Tale, which was just like bundled on, like, that's on GBA. There was bundles for those two things everywhere.
Dreamcast was just, giving those bundles away for free. It's all these manufacturers.
Sonic Heroes and Super Monkey Ball Deluxe. That's kind of like the cool thing to have on Xbox.
Yeah.
Like, everyone loves that. It's not super common. It's not super rare. It's just, I feel like the demand is low, and so the price hasn't skyrocketed on it. But also it's kind of lame because it's just one case with 2 discs in it. I don't know. It could be cooler, but it's on Xbox, so that docks a few points. Really, all it has going for it is that it's got Sonic on the cover, but I think it's cool.
A Sega 2-pack, and those are always infamously collectible in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Needless to say, if this was on GameCube, it'd be $1,000.
It's true.
Speaking of which, there is Sonic Mega Collection Plus with Super Monkey Ball Deluxe. Pretty sure that one's dirt common. And then the last one is the Tom Clancy's Classic Trilogy, which is freaking 3 discs packed into one regular sized DVD case, which is wild.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool one.
So that's my quick one.
I like that. Pretty doable for the most part too, just like the Vita first person shooters. None of those games are gonna break the bank, and you get a good amount of good games too. So nice. People actually say the Shrek 2 game is pretty good. I've never played it, and people might be lying to me for the bit, but I've heard pretty good things about the Shrek 2 game.
Yeah,
even though it's like the most common game on every console.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, this is like 5 purchases, you're getting 11 games. You're really getting your bang for your buck. Oh, the Mega Collection's in there? That's like 20 games. Hang on.
Exactly. And it's funny because that's actually the only one that you mentioned that I hadn't heard of was the Mega Collection and Monkey Ball. So I wonder if that one's harder to find than I realized, because I've never seen that one or heard of it.
I should have looked into it.
Who knows? Maybe you just found the rarest Xbox game. To the moon, baby. All right. So my last subset I have here, everybody loves a good horror game, but I feel like when it comes to retros, harder to find, big sets of horror games. But one more retro-sided console that had a good amount of horror games actually was the Dreamcast. So this is a list of all the Dreamcast horror games for you to collect. So we got Alone in the Dark, New Nightmare, we got Blue Stinger, we got Carrier, we got D2, Dino Crisis, Evil Dead Hail to the King, House of the Dead 2, Ill Bleed, Nightmare Creatures 2, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil Code Veronica, Shadow Man, The Ring Terror's Realm, Typing of the Dead, and Zombie Revenge.
Blue Stinger? Isn't that a shmup?
No, it's like a weird, like, semi-horror action game. It's a very strange one, but it is definitely horror adjacent. So
weird. I always thought that was a shmup. That's funny.
No, it looks like it would be based off of the cover, but it's not. It's like a 3D action horror kind of game. People do not like it. It's apparently not very good at all. But
you know what I've always wanted to play is Dino Crisis. That game looks really cool.
Dino Crisis is dope. It scared me a lot as a child, because I watched my dad playing it grow up. I never played it myself. I just have vivid memories of being afraid watching my father play it. So
I guess the sequel never came to Dreamcast.
Nah, it's weird because it's just on PS2, but I think it's PS1. So yeah, Dreamcast just did that poorly.
That's a great list right there. I feel like you don't hear a lot of love for horror on Dreamcast specifically. It's definitely PS1,
but there's
PS2.
A decent amount of games. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How many was that?
That is 16 games.
Not bad.
And I mean, hell, House of the Dead too, all-time classic. Who doesn't love House of the Dead?
Yeah, always wanted to play Typing of the... Oh, I did play it for a minute, Typing of the Dead. But I would love to own that with a keyboard. That'd be awesome.
That would be so fun. I definitely need to get me a Dreamcast keyboard at some point.
Phantasy Star and Typing of the Dead.
The only 2 games anyone needs to be happy.
I went with PlayStation Light Gun games for my last one here.
Oh, fun.
Shout out to game-rave.com for doing the legwork on literally everything PS1 on this planet. So, I'm going to go through the list. Only 5 of this semi-large list actually came with a gun packed in. So I guess they just expected you to buy a gun or buy one of these games that came with a gun bundle. It's kind of weird. So the 5 that came with one were all Namco titles, and there's like a lot of games on here that aren't Namco. So it's like you were expecting them to go and buy, like,
support another developer.
Right? I don't understand.
To play your game. I'm sure that they sold them like just the gun peripheral at some point, but yeah, I understand what you're saying.
You're probably right. But let's go through it. So Area 51, arcade classic, Crypt Killer. I don't know anything about that one. Die Hard Trilogy 1 and 2. I think some of these games can be played without the gun, if I'm not mistaken. I mean,
I don't actually know if any of them require it.
Interesting.
I could be wrong though.
Elemental Gearbolt, which you got to put an asterisk on that one. I'll come back to that. Gunfighter: The Legend of Jesse James. Judge Dredd, Lethal Enforcers 1 and 2. Maximum Force. You have Point Blank 1, 2, and 3. These are Namco titles that all got big box bundles. All 3 of them. Project Horned Owl. Resident Evil Survivor. And that's another one with an asterisk. That one actually had the light gun support removed in the US release. So maybe don't count that,
funny.
Depending where you live. Revolution X. The home version, once again, removed light gun support. This one's weird to me. Star Wars Rebel Assault 2. That's one of those extra large jewel case games that you always see for like cheap. I think it has the Millennium Falcon on it. I don't know anything about that game, but I had no clue that it used the light gun. That sounds pretty neat. And then there's Time Crisis and Time Crisis Project Titan, and both of those came with a big box.
Interesting.
So you know what I'm going to say about Elemental Gearbolt?
You can't talk about that big fancy special edition?
It got some kind of giveaway, like some kind of crazy edition from Working Designs that came with like a golden GunCon controller or something. I don't know. I didn't do all the research, but I think a lot of people know about this one already.
Yeah, I think only like 100 of them were made. It's like super duper limited.
I don't even know if it counts as a variant, but that is that's a cool thing I just wanted to mention.
Cool. Well, there you go, folks. 6 subsets for you to waste your money on.
There you go, 6.
I expect you to comment the results down below after you go buy them all now on eBay.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully this kind of just like got your mind moving a little bit into like what kind of things you could go after, especially like the individual developer composer type stuff. I think that would be, I want to look into that for myself.
Yeah, that could be definitely something unique to have in your collection because a lot of people don't collect that way. So if you want to be different, there you go.
Where can the people find you, Craig?
The people could find me, Craig's Game Room, on YouTube and Twitter and Instagram, and I think that's it.
Big video coming out soon, huh? Gonna be hush
big
hush
video.
on that.
Got that big video coming soon, and of course, you could listen to my podcast, Generations Behind, on there bi-weekly. Check it out, please.
And we will see you guys in a week or so for another episode.
Take care.